Today on Unboxed Talks, we sit down with Paul Donnelly, partner at Middle East Advisory Partners, for a sharp conversation on what really holds businesses back, from financial blind spots to short-term thinking and the loneliness of leadership. This episode gets into the realities most founders do not talk about enough. Welcome to Unboxed Talks, a podcast by Unbox and Morph, where we sit down with operators, entrepreneurs, and creators who are shaping the region. Real conversations, real journeys, no fluff, no scripts. This is Unboxed Talks. Paul, welcome to Unboxed Talks. It's a pleasure to have you with us. So basically, Paul, you work with owned and managed companies, you consult them on many fronts, and I believe you have some interesting stories to tell us. I would love to start with something that you mentioned earlier while we were prepping for the episode. Why is it lonely at the top?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something that we dwell on a lot as the leaders and shareholders of Middle East Advisory Partners. You know, our focus is on the owner-operated segment of businesses. And when you look around the world, not just the Middle East or even the UAE, even Dubai, often founders set the business up and they grow organically, employing people, employing worker bees, for want of a better description. That business gradually scales. But if you think of a pyramid, they remain at the top and that never changes. But again, thinking of that pyramid comparison, you end up with a situation where you could have 120, 150, 200 people below you, but you're that one person sat at the very top. And it's a lonely old space up there. And when the people that you've employed are exactly that, employees, it's sometimes difficult to get the right answers, responses, challenges from them unless you've got trusted confidence, which is what we hopefully bring to our clients.
And what are the business owners not saying up front?
I don't know that they don't say anything. I think
are they hiding anything? Like, are they really alone, lonely? They're unable to take strategic and correct decisions, you believe?
Yeah. So this is, again, it's an interesting concept, because what you'll find is business owners don't necessarily admit it, but it's not through fault of not admitting it. It's through fault of not knowing what you don't know. So you can only really identify with the things that you know when they're placed back in front of you. Often the role that we perform is being a mirror back to said client, business owner, and actually reflecting back to them, the decision they've taken. Had they have taken a slightly different pivot into another direction, or had they changed their scope, what could have been the outcome? What could have been different? And a great example would be a client that we worked with recently. We've done a 4-week project with a client. We've reflected a lot of the things that they're doing within their business back at them. They've done incredible things. They've got nearly a 200 million dirham revenue business. Profitability is fairly flat, but had they have just tweaked a few of those small little things, what they could have found themselves being is a 250 million dirham business with higher profitability, a better culture, a better setting, all of these things. But when you're just sitting at the top on your own, it's difficult to see that and admit it,
That's a good approach. I never thought about it, to be honest.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Nobody thinks about it. And it's reflected back at you.
Then you realize it, and it makes sense. So you said that there was a light bulb moment that was preset, and most founders, that's their breaking point. What was the moment where you said that this market is underserved and broken?
Yeah, so one of our key philosophies within Middle East Advisory Partners is that we roll our sleeves up and get into the weeds with the owner of businesses, and we work with them, alongside them. We become the trusted confidant. That light bulb moment for us was we have other businesses. My partners and I had other businesses outside of Middle East Advisory, and you identify very quickly on that lonely patch. But then you might look up outside and say, okay, let me go and take an advisor on board. when you start to look at, let's say, the big four or even the next tier down, it can be quite cost prohibitive. And therefore, you may say, I can't afford this as a business owner. So what am I going to do differently? Because let's say the big four, they don't want to take on a part-time role. They don't want to take on a fractional role. They want a project that's going to return big numbers. That was the light bulb moment for us. The UAE has built itself upon a bit of a entrepreneurial world, startups, people growing organically. These are the guys that don't have that kind of additional support. We identified with that. The light bulb came on and we said, hey, let's go and target this particular market space because this is an opportunity for us, not just to grow our own business, but actually to see other businesses succeed and grow and support that. That's our kind of outlook.
And why do you think that SMEs are underserved?
Well, as I say, the price of getting a consultancy practice in to help you is generally quite expensive.
Yeah.
We make our rewards.
So it's only pricing.
It's interest, it's pricing.
Is it ego maybe?
Yeah, you could say ego, but I know a lot of the guys that sit in the big four and other big circles, they're great guys, but they've got big overheads to cover. So that, again, makes it almost problematic. And if you've got the chance to do a multi-million-dollar deal with a Fortune 500 company, or a guy that's baking bread down the road, where you're going to spend most of your attention. And that's what this model is. We are absolutely not focused on that. Listen, don't get me wrong, if it comes, we won't say no. But the guy that's baking the bread around the corner is the guy that we want to support and focus upon.
Let's focus a bit more on SMEs per se, because that's the big majority and the pool of the market. Do they really understand the importance of consultancy and what you guys do in terms of advisory? Do they have accessibility to it, or there might be arrogance involved where their ego doesn't really allow them to do that step? Like, I don't need no one. I'm on the right path.
Yeah, look, we're you can see I've got no hair. My partners are all graying and aging.
Everyone is bald.
And they're not all bald. But we
come with...
It's not part of the territory. No. But what it is, it demonstrates experience. We're all aging. We've all got years of experience on our side. And because of that, we identify very quickly with those that are interested in our service and those that can see the benefit of bringing us on board and those that are not and wasting our time and their own time. And I give you a simple example. There's an analogy in the marketplace that would say that the people that have got you to where you are today are not necessarily the people that are going to get you to where you're going tomorrow. And because of ego, again, wrong word, but probably your morals and a loyalty, it's difficult to cut ties with employees that have got you from yesterday to today because they're not going to get you there tomorrow. Whereas you can bring us in and we can coach those individuals, or we can work with those individuals to help you grow beyond where you are today. And another great example, another client that we worked with recently, a lady general manager, very, very strong in terms of her relationship with her employees, relationship with her clients. However, by her own admission, finance wasn't her strength. And therefore, we are now engaged to work with her on a daily and weekly, monthly basis to support her primarily around the finance function. Now, she's got a finance director in her business, she's got accounts clerks, etc., etc. But what she needed is somebody at a high level that's going to support her to understand the financial aspects of the business better. And that's, again, a role that we come in and play.
That's interesting. I believe that you defined the gap in a nice way, and it's well put. I'm now interested in understanding a bit what you said earlier in the chat, that you stopped thinking short term. That's something that you call the silent killer.
Yeah.
And let's go deep from here. What does short-term thinking actually look like inside a business?
Yeah, so a portion of the work that we would do outside with our clients would be looking at growth. Growth be revenue, growth be profitability, EBITDA, whatever it might be. Often business owners look at just a few days or a few weeks ahead, and therefore
to get through the month.
Yeah, often. And if that is the case, if you're seeking investment, an investor isn't necessarily going to have an appetite for you if you're only looking at tomorrow. They want to see what is your real big ticket prize in 3 to 5 years. What are you trying to achieve? And I was talking with one of your colleagues outside before we came in the studio, and I was explaining that one of the messages we share to clients is don't set your business up and think, about putting the bread on the table for today and tomorrow. Think about, how am I exiting? What is my exit plan? Am I going to be acquired by a bigger boy? Am I looking to do the acquiring in X amount of days, weeks, months, years? What's the big picture that I'm trying to achieve? Because that's what investors want to hear as well. So that's maybe what I think about is short term. But you could also weave that back out of the financial side and think systems as well. Too many people knee-jerk reaction into putting a system that would suit a business for you and I, 2 people, as opposed to thinking that in a year's time, I'm going to have 20 people sat around this table that are all going to be operating around this system. And therefore, that long-term big picture thinking is really important. So breaking it down into bite-sized chunks, absolutely. But doing it in such a way where you're focused on the big picture is very important.
And what's the real cost of thinking short term? Like, what will it cost that business per se over the next 5 years if they only plan short term and move in that bit by bit?
Yeah. So you mentioned something earlier, and I mean I think we've all forgotten about it. But COVID, I use an analogy a lot where during the COVID period, everybody knew how to bake banana bread, and everybody was out making banana breads.
Yeah.
But nobody knew what to do after banana bread. And this is what happens. You end up with almost blinkers on. You have one oven, one size, can only fit one set of trays, and then you end up doubling costs. You end up having to backtrack 3, 4, 5 steps and set up again. It's very difficult to quantify and put an actual number on it because every business is different. But there's definitely a cost to short-term thinking. And I think it's something that we would definitely challenge. And interestingly, I'll use an example. We worked with a client who had bought freeze dryers. He was doing a special food mix, and his freeze dryers, the initial one he bought did, again, I don't know, let's just say 10 kilo worth of food. Fast forward to where we are now, he's now running 2 freeze dryers of 100 kilo each. So the question is, what's he done with the 10 kg one? It doesn't do anything for him. It's sat there gathering dust. So you almost have to think big from day one.
I like the example of the banana bread. Those were good times.
Good times, yeah. Good banana breads, especially the one that Unboxed sell with the chocolate.
Exactly. Now let's tackle the advisory is expensive. That myth that runs around and it's known in the market. Everyone believes that advisory comes with a huge bill. Mm-hmm. How did you change that belief around that? And what is really a powerful moment that led to this?
Yeah, so advisory is expensive if you go to one of the big boys. Because as I said already, they have got a huge overhead they've got to cover. They've got all the flagship stores, offices in the prime locations. These are all huge overheads. But we operate from a smaller office, as you well know, in Unboxed. And the amount of time we spend in client offices is where we get best value. And then again, our USP is the fact that we, as the partners of the business, are the people that roll our sleeves up and get the work done ourselves. Now, we recognize there's a limitation to that also, but the difference is we don't have a huge overhead behind us, so therefore we are able to keep costs down. Now, there are sort of different ways to look at cost structures as well, and we don't always look at upfront. We never do anything for free, but we don't always take upfront fees. And because of that, we can work our fees around what works for the clients as well. So just to reiterate, we never do anything for no fee whatsoever. but we always make
You're
sure
not an NGO. We get that. Everyone knows that.
exactly.
That's
We model
understandable.
we model our fees around what the clients need as well.
But let me follow up with another question, like looking at it from another perspective. What's more costly, advisory or bad decision?
Wow, I don't think I need to answer that. You don't need an advisor for that one. Although I could submit an invoice if you like.
Advise us.
No, I think the truth is, I mean, we all know that having a bad decision and having to backtrack is a problem, and it is much more costly. And we always say, you know, it's the don't pay us for the work we're doing right now with you. Pay us for the years of experience that we've built and it's locked in here that we're releasing to you, Mr. Client.
Like
today.
let's take an example. What's the real cost of bad accounting?
Yeah, I mean, this is a major issue we come across on a regular basis. Transactions that we do with clients, whether it be through investing, whether it be just through review, we have a number of situations where we get to almost a pivotal point within the process, and we secure the not so much audited accounts, but general managerial accounts and month-on-month accounting, and the numbers are wrong. And the numbers are just not, dare I say, simple accounting processes and not done correctly. And that then slows down the whole process of what might be a transaction, as an example, because we have to then review and revert and change and update the numbers. But not only that, your investor has now lost faith. Your investor has now run to the hills because you don't have your paperwork in place properly. So if I was giving one thing to as a piece of advice to a business owner, and interesting, my wife is a business owner, and we've just been having this discussion, is whilst the finance...
Was she a client?
She's not a client. She gets free advice over dinner, as long as she's cooked it. But no, we always say that if you can... If you've got one thing to do in your business as the leader, it's to ensure that the finance function is working properly. And I was interested, I was with a client a few weeks ago, and there was a bit of a conference going on, and the question was asked, who's responsible for finance in the business? The finance director put her hand up, and then it was reverted to say, actually, everybody in the business should be responsible for finance. And it is a great way to look at it.
And what's a major and repeatable mistake that the majority of the SMEs that come to you are falling in it and doing it repeatedly over and over and over?
Yeah, so but bad decisions, no confidant, nobody to bounce ideas off, employing friends, and also when you... What does they say? You know, it's either a decision made from the gut or from the heart or from the head. And when you are being told by those places that it's the wrong decision, you don't do it. Or the other way around, if it's the right decision, you kind of have to do it. Prolonging the pain isn't taking it away. It's still going to be pain. So therefore, as a great example, if you've employed somebody to get you from where you were to where you are, and you know that person isn't going to get you any further in the business, in the market, and it's not part of your strategy, cut ties, because you're going to end up breaking the relationship anyway. So you're almost better to, and this is a great example of something we see week in, week out. In fact, we try and summarize it around kind of 5 things that we deal with a lot, and it's people, it's process, it's cash flow, it's scaling the business and the strategy that goes with that, and then the final thing is the owner themselves. They're the 5 repeatables that we see time and time again.
You touched the pain.
Well, and that's what, we were once described as either paracetamol or paratroopers. I'm not sure which one we are, but, we poke and we prod and we ask the questions of the clients until we get to their pain. And once we get to that pain, only then we can help resolve and fix the pains. We hope anyway.
So you said earlier that the biggest early mistake is trying to compete on all fronts with other advisors as well. That's a niche lesson. Why is trying to compete with everyone a strategic mistake?
This is another great learning, actually. It's something we've touched on off camera, but not so much on camera. Is we're guilty. I always say Middle East Advisory Partners' biggest strength is the fact that we can offer lots of things to clients unfortunately, that also then weakens our argument as being experts. So our biggest strength is also our biggest weakness. And I would suggest that that is also the same of a lot of small business owners as well, because when you're first starting out in your business, you will chase revenue.
Yeah.
Which sometimes becomes a necessity, and your business then becomes dependent on it. And therefore, well, where's your strategy? You're no longer on it. You're completely off it. So you have to find a way of pivoting back across to what is your strategy and be true to it. Don't chase everything. Again, I mean, I work with a client who's got over 100 brands in his portfolio. He's out there. He and his team are out there presenting the product day in, day out. But sometimes I question what the strategy to get those brands to market are. And again, another client who's had two real key market segments that they've worked across for many, many years. All of a sudden, coming into 2026, they decided they were going to bring a third strategy to the table. But there was no quantifiable research done to say, this is why we're doing this. I do believe you've got to have that knowledge before you start chasing and trying to be all things to all men. So, and look, as I said, we were guilty of it as well. So it's easy to be sucked in.
Exactly. And you are a service company. You do B2B, and you were talking about growth and scaling. Now, how do you scale your advisory firm? Because you guys, at the end of the day, you're selling your time versus money.
Yeah, brilliant. Let me just correct you on one thing. You did say we're B2B, which in traditional terms we are, but we would consider ourselves almost on a B2C.
Because you're dealing with individuals.
Yeah, but we don't consider it as almost customer, it's client, and that client becomes a friend and we become trusted and we get on a journey with the client. So whilst it's not B2C, retail or over-the-counter style type stuff, we do consider ourselves almost kind of that journeyman that we get on board with the client. So it's a little bit of a grey area, I would suggest, as opposed to being true B2B.
So you want the founder as a friend, as an individual to buy from you?
We absolutely do. Yeah, absolutely.
Not as a company, as an entity to just hop in and get any contract.
Correct. I mean, they can go
I like the friendly approach to it, but it's still B2B, right?
Listen, it is. You're right. But it's just our way of terming it, and it's that journey that we go on.
So how do you scale your
that was your question.
service?
Yeah, but brilliant question. So we've been doing a huge amount of work recently, and I was actually received an interesting WhatsApp yesterday. I'll share it with you offline, and maybe you'll share it with your with the team, but or the viewers. Sorry, we've been looking at, we can't clone ourselves, and we, as we've said already, only have the same 24 hours a day that everybody is. Well, this is it. This is where we're headed. So we've been building out our own AI tools that will enable us to take, let's just say, what the big four might charge $100,000 for. We might have always charged $50,000 for. But actually now, using our tools and our strategic mechanics behind the scenes, we can actually drop that down to, let's say, $25,000. So all of a sudden...
So you're automating as much as possible?
It's automating, but it's using the AI tools to do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of things like the research, documentation review. You know, we still have to do it. Don't get me wrong, it's not getting rid of the manual input, but what it's doing is picking up the heavy lifting. And I think that's going to be the key to...
So you guys built your own frameworks and workflows and all of that, and that's helping you guys automate as much as possible and have artificial intelligence pick up the heavy load a bit.
Yep, we've even used recently, I can't go into too much detail at this stage, but I'll come back on when it's ready to go to market. But we've even used an AI platform to build an AI tool. So we've used AI to build an AI tool that will help us and our clients develop their strategy out further. Let's keep it like that. But then, the simple thing is we built it to use it internally. And then we realized, actually, this is a revenue generating tool that we could release externally. So we're just, for want of a better description, topping and tailing it, making it look shiny. And then
the SaaS is coming into market soon.
Who knows? Watch this space.
We talked earlier about listening to clients and challenging the detail, but being prepared to live up to the solution. You said that that's the habit that changed trajectory a bit. Let's reframe it into what does really challenging the detail mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're building out, I mean, we mentioned it already a second ago. If you're building out a strategy of some description, and you're going to pivot into a new arena that you've never played in before, just looking at it on a high level and capturing the information that you heard in the coffee shop or, walking down the road or at a business meeting, that's not really the answer. You need to get into the intimate detail to really understand, is there a position for me? How do I mitigate as much of the risk as possible? You can only mitigate the risk if you know what that risk is, and you can only know what that risk is if you get granular on the detail of what you're trying to achieve. And I think that's where we focus our attentions quite a lot.
And as they say, the devil lies in the detail.
Correct. But also, there's a time element to this as well, because you could spend, if we just use a day.
You can overdo it.
Correct. You can get to a point where it's too much. And this is, again, an area where we find ourselves playing a lot with our clients is when they've produced a document, let's say, for example, having a fourth set of eyes, i.e. our eyes, go over the document, review it, challenge your thinking. That will then hopefully give you a fresh perspective to say, have you thought about this? Or absolutely, this is incredible. Go forth and multiply, and that's, again, the position that we find ourselves in.
And how do you challenge a founder without offending them? Since you're challenging the detail, you're going in depth, and you're up there advising on all the fronts.
Yeah, great question. What we would always say is, there's nothing in any of our reports or any of our discussions that's intentionally laid out to upset anybody. However, some of it will be sensitive.
Kicks in.
Correct. Yeah, and look, we are, as I said already, we're humans. We roll our sleeves up and we sit and put the arm around the owner. Again, I mean, a client I was with a few weeks ago, halfway through kind of an interview process we were doing with the individual, she got really upset and actually started to well up, and that expressed the passion that she's got for the business. And we just said, let's just take a minute. Let's have a cup of tea, chill for a second, and then we'll come back round. And I think that's what we've got, is that human touch. And we like to have that relationship with our clients rather than just, present them a report that says, this is rubbish, that's rubbish, you need to look at this, and all these people have to go. We don't just break it down into a manageable report that can be digested. We present it back in such a way that here's your problem, but here's the fix.
Yeah.
And we're here to help you deliver that. And I think that's often what happens. When you hear a problem, you go, oh, I don't know how to fix it. But we look for that fixed almost first.
Often advisors and consultants, they tend to become a yes man just to avoid painful conversations and those tricky situations that you tend to fall in, and having those kind of moments. How do you avoid becoming that yes man?
So again, that's another really, really great point you raise. I think we talked about it as well, I think, but I do a lot of sports and running and training. And my coach once said to me, when we finish a race, you need to go and take some time to do your thing, and then come back and let me know when it's time to get back on the train and we get going again. And that's the same for a consultant. If I was here just to earn, a few extra dirhams, I'd be knocking on your door daily, weekly, saying, yes, 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 like you've alluded to. However, part of the job of a good consultant is be able to say to the client, my work here is done and I'm going to move on. Or my work on this project is done, but I've spotted this thing here. Should we take a look at it? And I think that's almost just as important as saying we're done, And it's not about the revenue side of it for us. It's that friendship, that trusted element again.
It's a tricky situation, to be honest, but sometimes it happens.
Yeah.
And because we're all human beings and we're emotional.
Exactly. And that's where we try to strip away as much emotion as we can from our side, But I mean, again, I'll give you an example. A client of mine a few weeks ago said he almost broke down in front of myself and a couple of other colleagues and said, I it's me that owns this business, and at the end of every week, it's me that goes home with the problems, and it's me that has sleepless nights because I can't pay the wage bill or whatever. And I actually stopped him halfway through and said, let me just correct you here. Whilst you think it's you, and I was referencing and speaking for the others as well, we will stand shoulder to shoulder with you to ensure that doesn't happen. You don't have those sleepless nights. But we need you to be open with us as well. So it needs to be a two-way street. And I think firstly, it resonated with him. And secondly, he brought it back to my attention a few weeks later and said, I really appreciate what you did there. So that is a strong, operating model that we come to market with.
Which leads me to just a follow-up question on that, just wrapping up the emotional part. What's the common emotional flow that you're noticing in business owners most of? Is it ego? Is it fear? Is it avoidance of numbers? Maybe they don't want to look at the financials, or delegating finance too early, or even blaming external factors, let's say.
I'll capture it in maybe just a very simple sentence. Yeah, but it doesn't work like that in our market. And you've used lots of words there that probably describe it. Yes, there's fear. Yes, there's ego. There's nobody knows it better than I do. So there's lots of things that contribute to it. But ultimately,
the most common one.
It all comes down to that one thing. Everybody thinks their business is unique. And, there's only a few things that businesses do. They buy services, they sell services, they buy products, they sell products. They add value on whatever it might be. There's only a few things that business owners, operators, and businesses, whatever, do. Whether it's going to the hairdressers or taking your pet dog for a groom. It's the same business practice, isn't it, ultimately? So there's only a few things that you do. And again, everybody thinks their business is unique, but truth is, they're probably not so unique.
Might be a bit different, but not very unique.
Different colors on the can. Different name above the door.
Depends on the business, the category, the USP, the market. I don't know if there's
an example.
Maybe there's innovation in it. Like when Facebook started, let's say, that was innovative and unique.
Totally agree. And you have that scenario where you will find one or two.
But now it's common. You have
correct.
Social media.
Exactly. Yeah. So sure, Facebook might have been the trendsetter, but now there's lots of them. If you just think, I'm sorry to say this, but if you think podcasting, and vlogging and influencers. I mean,
there's a lot.
10 years ago there was one, and now
there's a lot of everything.
Correct. Yeah. And that's ultimately what happens in any business. If you can be that first mover and get that advantage, wow, you're onto something.
Then it's a game of market share.
Correct. Yeah. And it's staying ahead of the curve. That's what we always try and look at with our clients as well. How do you stay relevant and ahead?
Paul, since you work with family businesses, what's harder usually, strategy or family politics?
Yeah, good question.
Give us the juice. It's for what's happening inside.
I think culture will outweigh strategy most of the time.
At all times, yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
See, if you can get everybody believing in the same goal, NASA wouldn't have gone to the moon if everybody had a different agenda. And they created a culture where everybody believed we're going to get to the moon. And that's what businesses need to think about. Well, when you talk about the dynamics of family businesses versus the strategy, I think the harder part is that kind of second and third generation coming through to take over the lead. It's not necessarily wrong that they're changing the model or they're changing the direction of the business. But if you've still got the grandfather that set the business up or the father that set the business up, they're always going to struggle with that pivot across into a new business model or a new vertical. So you've got to get that buy-in across every dynamic.
What would be the major conflict in those scenarios?
I guess the major conflict of a family business is when it's that hierarchy kind of who's responsible for what, and as I say, maybe second and third generations coming through and maybe not wanting responsibility for the family business. They want to do their own thing, and I have a great example of that with a client that I've worked with a family locally. Actually, give credit where credit's due. The son of the family business said, "I'm going to do this on my own 2 feet. I'm not going to go knocking on the door of daddy to borrow the money to drive my business, but I'm going to do it in such a way that I kind of make him proud of it." So the problem was the father wanted him to come into the family business, and there's a dynamic you've got to try and balance again. So there's no easy answer to that one. But what I will say is culture, and don't be fooled by people saying yes as having a good culture.
I love it. And when does governance become necessary in those situations?
Again, a brilliant statement, that, isn't it? Because when do you pivot from being a single owner that sat in an office on your own to then you've got 1, 2, 10, 100, 200 staff? Really? I mean, we worked with a client recently. There is circa 50 people in the business. They have got the best governance I've seen in what I would still consider an SME. In all the years that I've worked in this space, governance is something you've got to keep an eye on from the very beginning, because if you start to implement it later, it's much more difficult. Yeah. Trying to put changes in place are harder later. Whereas if you have a strict SOP, governance, approval process, delegations of authorities, have it all there mapped out.
Those changed as well. Like
they do.
Back in the 90s and the 80s and even 70s, you have family businesses that have been around for more than a couple of decades. Like they didn't really have those high-level SOPs and that much organization and management.
No, true. And they still don't now. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have it. And I think that's the key. That it's never too late to try and put them in, but it's much more difficult to put them in later. What I would also say, just to maybe kind of close that subject matter as well, is having an SOP in an owner's brain or a delegation of authority in the owner's brain is one thing. Having it on a piece of paper so that the entire business can understand it is a very different thing. And then ensuring that everybody follows it, including the owner, is again probably the third and most important piece of that jigsaw. Because, you wouldn't believe the amount of times where, but it's let's just do it that way.
Because people don't like change, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're humans and we're creatures of habits.
Yeah.
And we don't tend to move and be flexible much.
And I said earlier, don't be confused because somebody says yes as that being a good culture. We are in an area of the world where there is a layer of subservientness and there is a want to please. And therefore employees do kind of automatically take on this. Yes, boss, I will do this, sir. Thank you, sir. And run off and do it. But that's not always right. We need employees to challenge. I attend a town hall for a client every month, and every month he says, has anybody got any questions? Nobody says anything. And it's really frustrating because he's wanting and passionate about sharing that information and he gets nothing back from the team. And that's difficult.
Thank you for sharing that. Paul, before we wrap up, I have 10 fire questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Without thinking too much, just straight away give us whatever you have top of mind. Cash flow or profit, which matters more?
It's cash in a bank.
Equity or control?
Equity.
Hire fast or hire slow?
Hire slow.
Debt, friend or enemy?
Depends whose money it is. He's an enemy.
What's a red flag in a founder within 5 minutes?
It doesn't work like that in my industry.
One number every founder must know daily.
One number that every founder should know daily is their cash position.
Best time to bring in an advisor?
It's never too late. We only work with businesses that are already trading. We don't really work with startups, but it can be early startups for trading.
What destroys more businesses, tax or ego?
Not a doubt, it's ego.
Family business, blessing or burden?
Some incredible family businesses in the world, so it's a blessing.
Last one, legacy or liquidity?
Great question. I think legacy for some of those family businesses, liquidity is obviously the key to the business.
Thank you for that. Wrapping up, before we let you go, Paul, how can the Unboxed community support you right now? Like you mentioned earlier when we were offline discussing, if someone listening realizes they've been avoiding their numbers, what they should do this week. So let us know how they can really help you, support you.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of supporting me and Middle East advisory partners, I guess I would answer that question is you have to help yourself. I mean, I was speaking earlier again to one of your colleagues and I said, if you are looking to at some point exit your business, ensure that you have got your finances, your accounts up to date, whether it's QuickBooks or NetSuite or whatever it might be, make sure that you get your numbers up together daily. Comes back to your quickfire question, so that you know what position you're in. Because if tomorrow you come to us and say, hey guys, Middle East Advisory, help me sell my business, it's one of the first things we're going to look at. And if that's not right, then the whole thing's going to be delayed. So let's get that right.
And who's the ideal client for you? You just said you don't really help startups early on.
So we like business owners that have got a vision and recognize that to realize the vision.
Are there businesses without vision?
Oh yeah,
Are you seeing lots of them?
Yeah, there absolutely are. There are businesses.
This needs another podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Let's start again. No. There are absolutely businesses out there without a vision, and I talked about it earlier. There's the businesses that take the knee-jerk reaction to do X or do Y or do something different. That's way off strategy. Get back to your vision and mission and your strategy.
And at what revenue stage those ideal clients should be out?
No, we don't have a specific revenue stage. I mean, we don't compete with the big boys in and the blue chips, but we like to see that business is revenue generating already.
Any specific geography?
No, 95% of our clients are across the Middle East, predominantly UAE, but we do have clients in the UK and further afield, and we're actually heading off to the UK next week to go and meet some clients and some investors. And then whilst we're in the UK, bizarrely, we have a call with another investor from the US. So we have a client from Australia as well. So we don't have a specific geographic territory. We're industry agnostic. We are not bound by borders. Everybody's welcome. And look, our office door is always open at Unboxed, and anybody's willing to come and have a chat if they wish.
Thank you for passing by, Paul. It was a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.